So in my field of cybersecurity, government access to encrypted information has been a 25-year debate. On the one side, police claim that they're going dark and need access to phones and chats to solve crimes. On the other side, security experts say it's impossible to provide that access without also making the systems fundamentally insecure for everybody. And that's where the debate is stalled. There's a lot of technology that can be brought to bear on this problem, technology of security and of surveillance. There are real policy questions surrounding these technologies. And there's a security benefit of having data available to law enforcement, even though it might be available to others. There's a security benefit of having data secure from everybody, even though that also makes it unavailable to law enforcement. The question is, which is more important? To what degree? The underpinnings of surveillance capitalism matter here, how companies are already spying on users. There are questions about consumer acceptance and international alternatives, how other countries will use these same access technologies for more authoritarian purposes. But here's the problem. Almost no policymakers are discussing this issue from a technologically informed perspective. Going dark is a scare term. So 60 years ago, the British scientist C.P. Snow wrote an essay called The Two Cultures. In it, he lamented the lack of a dialogue between what he called the scientific technical and the humanist traditions. He bemoaned that neither culture understood each other. It was like they were living in two separate worlds. We still have two separate worlds. The world of the technologists, who build cool tools without regards to how they upend society, and the world of policy and humanity that criticizes technology, proposes solutions without truly understanding the technologies. Now, that might have been okay in 1959. For the most part, technology and policy didn't interact with each other. But today, it's a different story. Technology is deeply intertwined with society. It's literally creating our world. And it's no longer sustainable for technology and policy to be in two different worlds. So in this short talk, I'm making the case for public interest technologists. But first, let's talk about how we got here. Now, the internet was never designed with any public policy in mind. In those early days, two things were true. It wasn't used for anything important ever, and you had to be a researcher to get access to it in the first place. You had an American-centric, male-dominated, profit-motivated IT industry. Didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the social effects of what they were doing. Software is deliberately excluded from normal product liability laws. Policymakers didn't want to slow down this important and very profitable industry. Silicon Valley had a libertarian ethics, and there were real government fears of stifling innovation. But internet tech is different than 1960s tech. It's more ubiquitous, it's more distributed, it's more commercial, it moves faster. And internet technology is embedded in almost every aspect of our lives. It's become both intimate and vital without any planning or forethought. So pretty much every form of communication, objects, the Internet of Things, critical infrastructure, and automation, autonomy, and physical agency make all this more urgent. Think about AI and machine learning or robotics. And technology has become de facto policy. Companies have effective control over free speech and censorship regardless of what the laws are. Companies can set limitations on personal freedoms regardless of what the laws are. So now we hear terms like algorithmic discrimination, the digital divide, information attacks on democracy, surveillance capitalism. And this all means that internet policy is no longer a separate thing. It's part of consumer policy. It's part of automobile policy, airplane policy, medical device policy. It affects discrimination and equal protection. It affects fairness, liberty, power, democracy. It's part of national security. It's part of everything. And technology is remaking the world. And we will never get the policy right if policymakers get the technology wrong. And we've had lots of examples of policymakers getting it wrong. Net neutrality, copyright debate, cybersecurity, algorithmic discrimination. Meanwhile, policy is forever trying to catch up to technology. So fixing this has two parts. One, policymakers need to understand tech. What we want is for all policy discussions to be informed by the relevant technologies. And when I think about how this should work, I think about Star Trek. Captain Picard would get all his officers together in the conference room, and they would all speak science at him. And Picard didn't ignore the science or discount it or demand a different answer. He would accept what the technologist told him and craft policy that took it all into account. The reality is that policymakers ignore technology if it doesn't conform to their politics. Maybe they don't know enough to do anything useful. Maybe they're still afraid of stifling innovation. And lobbyists are more than happy to provide pseudoscience to match any policy. If you watch the Facebook hearings in the United States, you saw policymakers with no idea how to regulate technology. We don't need policymakers to all be technologists. We need them to understand enough tech to know how to ask questions and learn from the answers. Enough tech to have good bullshit detectors. Enough tech to believe the truth in technology. Some of them need to be actual technologists in the area they're acting policy in, and hopefully have technologists on their staffs, kind of just like any other aspect of our complex modern world. The second part is we need more technologists to get involved in policy. We need more public interest technologists. All right, so I need to stop and define that term. The Ford Foundation defined it as technology practitioners who focus on social justice, the common good, and/or the public interest. Tim Berners-Lee called them philosophical engineers. I think of public interest technologists as people who combine their technological expertise with a public interest focus by working on tech policy, by working on a tech project with a public benefit, by working on tech inside government, or maybe by working at a more traditional institution as a technologist there. Right, maybe it's not the best term, but it's a very wide tent. We need to encompass all of it. We need public interest technologists to get involved in policy debates, and we need it now. One report I read called this a pivotal moment, and that report described 3 places for intervention. The first is the supply side. I think this is our biggest problem. There just aren't enough technologists. There aren't enough people who want to do this. Public interest technologists are a diverse and multidisciplinary group of people. Their backgrounds come from tech, from policy, from law. You don't need a computer science degree to be a public interest technologist. We need a variety of ways people can engage in this space. We need more jobs in public interest tech. We need ways that people can do this on the side or for a couple of years between more conventional tech jobs. We need public interest tech as part of every core computer science curriculum. We need clinics at universities so students can get a taste of public interest tech work. And we need companies to give people sabbaticals to do this and then value their expertise and experience when they return. We also need to foster diversity within public interest tech. The populations that are using the tech must be represented in the groups that shape the tech. Second place for intervention is the demand side. And actually, this is our most immediate problem. As bad as the supply is, there are even fewer places for people who want to do this work to go. So we need jobs funded across a wide variety of organizations. We need staff positions across government, executive, legislative, judiciary. We need more press organizations to do this kind of data-driven work. We also need companies to recognize that public interest technologists belong on their development teams. Third place of intervention is the market. Ways for the supply and demand to meet each other. Job boards, conferences, skill exchanges, ways to connect. Now, it's not that we don't have examples of all of this, both people and organizations. And I don't want to minimize the contributions over the years, but they're all exceptional and they're all exceptions. We need to scale public interest tech. We need more than a few stars or a few organizations. Today, there aren't enough people doing it, and there aren't enough people who know it needs to be done. What we need to do is build a world where there's a viable career path for public interest technologists. So there's an interesting parallel to public interest law. In the 1970s, there was no such thing as public interest law. The field was deliberately created, funded by organizations like the Ford Foundation. They funded legal aid clinics at universities so students would get a taste of housing law or discrimination law or immigration law. They funded fellowships at organizations like the ACLU and the NAACP. They created a world where public interest law is valued, where every partner at a major law firm is expected to have done some public interest work. And today, when the ACLU advertises a position for a staff attorney, paying between 1/3 and 1/10 of a normal corporate salary, they get hundreds of applications. Today, 20% of Harvard Law School graduates go into public interest law. And the school has soul-searching seminars because that percentage is so low. The number of Harvard computer science grads going into public interest work is basically zero. More generally, technologists need to understand the policy ramifications of their work. There's a perverse myth in Silicon Valley that technology is neutral. It's not, but it's a widely held truth. And historically, programmers have been given an inherent right to code the world as they saw fit. Because historically, it didn't matter. Technology consisted of tools. But now it does matter, and that privilege needs to end. Technology is deeply embedded in society, and the work technologists do affect the world we live in a very human way. Technology is social, it's political, it's economic. It's a complex system that's bigger than any one academic discipline. Now, big changes are coming. Artificial intelligence, 5G communications, Internet of Things, big data. The next disruption in internet technology will be about things and not people. And we can build these systems to prioritize different aspects of society: corporate profits, individual autonomy, privacy, government control, human rights. All these things are possible. The question is, what future will we collectively build? We need to all do this together, not just technologists, not just the traditional male American technologists. We need all different voices and all different expertise because we're all in this together. Technologists need to realize that when they're building a platform, they're also building a world. And policymakers need to realize that technologists are capable of building a world. So in his book, Future Politics, barrister Jamie Susskind wrote that the defining political question of the 20th century was this: how much of our lives should be governed by the state and how much by the market? It's a question we're still answering. The defining political question of the first half of the 21st century is different. How much of our lives should be governed by technology and under what terms? In the last century, we needed economists involved in policy. In this century, we also need technologists, because this is where the core issues of society lie. You know, if we're honest with ourselves, it never was okay for technology to be separate from policy. It's just that today the separation is much more dangerous. We need technologists in all aspects of public interest work: informing policy, creating tools, building the future. We need people who can speak tech to power, and we need them now. Thank you.